Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Experts Co-Marketing with Cloud Hyperscalers, how to go to market in a digital world with Christine and Kimberly. Guys, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Christine, I'm going to start with you if you want to give a brief introduction to who you are, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Good morning and good afternoon for those that are joining us outside of the U.S. 15 years ago, my current position is I am a vice president of global strategic alliances and F5. Before that, I worked at Red Hat in the open source space for business and worked at the ISV team and then also Cloud Hyperscalers team. Good morning.
And Christine, are getting a little bit of feedback on your end. If you have an internal mic you can switch to, or an external mic, try that. But we can hear you fine, just a little feedback. And Kimberly, I'll let you go ahead.
Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Kim Smith, Global Vice President at IBM, focused on our hybrid cloud solutions. So in partnership with organizations like our Red Hat arm, Christine and I have crossed paths, and then also Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and IBM Cloud. So focus very much on our large scale, what we call hyperscalers for cloud execution. And very excited to be here. My experience over the last 30 years has been primarily in digital innovation and cloud solutions. I'm a Microsoft alumni. For 12 years, I was at Microsoft. Prior to that, I was in the financial services and the consulting industry. And I've also worked at Capgemini as Chief Digital Officer and at Adobe.
Thank you so much. Well, we're going to jump right into this. And Kim, I'm going to give you this one first, but how does an entrepreneur engage with big companies like IBM, F5? Where do we start?
You know, it's actually easier than most people think. We really work to try and make our organizations first and foremost digitally accessible. And it's been like that for years. Now is more important than ever. Regardless of whether you have one person or you have 1,000 people in your organization. If you just went to, for example, IBM startup, Microsoft startup, F5 startup, we all have programs that are specifically geared toward engaging with entrepreneurs. And there are multiple types of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs that build software and services that complement the platforms that we develop. And then there are also organizations that have business expertise or industry relevant expertise, sometimes boutique based, that really support a lot of the different capabilities that we offer. So it's very easy to go and get signed up into our partner ecosystem to get access to software, to get access to resources. And we give quite a bit away, roughly about $120,000 per entrepreneur right now that we offer in IBM. And I know the partnerships that we have with some of the other hyperscalers provide even more incentives to engage and support those relationships. So it's a 1, 2, 3, get in, get signed up, get registered, and start using what's available to you.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo, Blake, what Kimberly says, I would say F5 is probably a little bit more immature on what we provide as far to the hyperscalers. We have a very seasoned channel program. So what we do is we have a partner management center that the partners go into. And what we do is we provide a lot of content, like what Kimberly said. We have a program and we make sure that a lot of that is accessible to the partners. But from my end, I actually lead a team with all the hyperscaler partners. And so they have really a lot of depth into the programs like AWS and Microsoft and GCP. So, for example, Microsoft, it's easy for me to go in and look at what they have. And what I do is I look at the programs that they have and I build on top of those and see how I can get lift in the market. So they have a lot of that already available. Like, for example, like branding. If I wanted to make a co-branded template, I can grab, the branding that's accessible to me with Microsoft, get that approved. They have all of that inside of their partner platform, which is fantastic for smaller companies, and even companies the size of F5.
Great. So moving on to the next one, how do you dovetail on top of existing programs within both of your large companies that already exist? And Christine, we'll let you take this one first.
Blake, can you repeat the question?
Sorry. So,
I
know I talk really fast. Yeah. So how do you dovetail on top of existing programs within large companies like yourselves?
Okay, so I'm going to take my favorite example. So AWS in their marketplace, they have their listings, and then they have like available for private offers for customers. So if a customer is on utility and they're spending a certain amount of money, they most likely will be saving money if they move to an annual contract. Now AWS has all that functionality built into Marketplace. So what I have done is I've actually hired somebody who just focuses in on that program, and we look to see, if customers have a large spend, and we've built in metrics to figure out, how much through a year that they're going to be spending, and if they can save on an annual contract. So I've seen that program. We had like 12 private offers a couple of years ago. We accelerated that to 77 private offers last year. And this year, I've actually added somebody to manage the program to where we have customer success now internally at F5, who's onboarding the customer and then making sure that their experience with F5 and AWS is successful. So just latching on really to a feature within Marketplace and building out a program that supports the customers is an example of how I've done that on my team.
Great. And Kim?
I love, Christine, that you shared that, because I would echo that we're doing similar things at IBM and with our partnerships with Microsoft and working closely with Red Hat as well. We just launched the IBM Azure on Red Hat OpenShift model, which is massively successful in the market in helping organizations figure out how to get to a cloud native environment. Many organizations have hybrid scale and hybrid cloud based experiences that they're trying to drive. There's not just one platform that they're working with. And we acknowledge that. We acknowledge that and use some of the tools and the capabilities and the automation and the what we call development, security, and operations excellence to really help them build command centers to determine what technologies make the most sense for the type of scale they're trying to drive on specific cloud platforms. And leveraging our relationship with Red Hat and Microsoft as an example, we are able to help organizations at scale look at tens of thousands of applications and through our garages determine which ones does it make sense to move fully into the cloud and become cloud native, and which ones does it require some on-premise or some hybrid cloud experience based on how this data is used, how secure it needs to be, and how much scale is required at any given time. And so we're really able to meet organizations where they are and really tap into some of the different capabilities of entrepreneurs at different stages of an organization's evolution. Those partnerships make it possible. And I would say our ecosystem is what allows us to have the scale that we're trying to drive.
Great. And we have a question from our audience. Where would you go to get a 101 type explanation for Cloud Hyperscalers? Like if you're just beginning, what is the best resource you guys have to navigate that? And Kimberly, you can start.
Yeah. So we have a lot of, again, digital assets. You could literally just Google, IBM AI or IBM Hyperscaler, and there are a ton of everything from snippet videos, kind of how-to and learning opportunities within maybe a 3 to 5 minute or a 30-second overview, to an in-depth course. We run badges and certification programs. We're actually part of a larger, what's called enablement skills initiative with organizations like Microsoft, like Amazon and Google, so that we can help expand upon all the different platform capabilities by educating people and getting them trained. What I love about us as large scale companies is we realize that the new skills that are coming, we call it blue collar skills, come from everywhere. You're not just getting college students anymore. We have veteran programs. We have people returning to the workforce. We have individuals that go through our P-Tech program, which are never going to go through a traditional college experience, but have amazing propensity to learn and engage in an engineering capacity. And so we've created several programs in the spectrum of enablement so that people can get up to speed quickly on the business value of what we're trying to achieve together with organizations in all sectors, and the ability to go in and drive your own technical competency as an individual or as an organization by following a learning path. And those learning paths are really valuable, whether you're looking to be an architect, an engineer, a developer, a designer, or even program management. We have different paths that we've identified that allow people to be successful in a multitude of capabilities.
Great. And Christine?
I think, just going back to what Kim was saying from a previous discussion is when the other program that we have is more of a co-sell program. And so going off of like what you're doing with Red Hat and OpenShift, very familiar with that in my previous life. But, what we did was we created a platform for co-sell as well, so that we operationalized co-sell to where we hired a contractor who understands the architecture of the Microsoft co-sell program, and we were able to exchange leads back and forth and get account teams, with account teams, and then, go and do co-sell in the field and get expansion in with that way. I'm looking at the question right now, how do you leverage co-sell with IBM and F5? F5 has a great co-sell program if you are a reseller and if you are more of a global SI. Our tools are not as built out if you are just more of a technology alliance partner. It's more of, getting dragged with technical development that you do with F5. That's really what you're getting when you look at it from a software vendor. And from my perspective, I'm looking at the same thing when I look at the hyperscalers. So how do I get drag in the field? What are those programs? And so building internally my program on top of a co-sell program is how I get that drag. And I don't know if that answers it, but it's how do you tap into an already built program that the hyperscalers have, and how are you leveraging that to get more awareness and more visibility?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Christy, because it's not just about, okay, how do you work with us? It really is about how do you actually execute. And where you focus more on the industry alignment and connection points, we're focused more on the technology side. And in fact, we look to that business and that industry expertise to really complement the technological capabilities that we bring to bear. I would say that, and I noticed a question that just came in that said, hey, how do we even do proof of concepts? I think the opportunity is really to leverage, each organization has their own methodology or framework for testing models. I will say that because we're all hyperscalers, we're doing this on steroids. We're doing this at the million usage level, the multi-million trillion click-through levels. And so if you're looking to build out a solution set for maybe a subset or a small audience, many of the things that we're doing will help you scale even beyond that. And I think that's hugely opportunistic. The way that we do that is through what we call our garage methodology and framework. And the garages allow for organizations to kind of taste test and validate experiential growth. And so if there's one business scenario that you're trying to drive forward and you need to see whether or not that's going to scale in a given market, or if that proof point's even going to work. I've worked with ventures that were trying to build out microservices, for example, in the telco industry. And that's their primary focus. And so what we do is we actually partner with large scale providers of telecommunications, and we identify garage experiences because they're all looking for startups and entrepreneurs as well. And so we help curate those relationships and then come together collectively to test those models. So you're not just testing in an IBM lab per se, you are testing in a telco lab. You're testing in a retail lab. You're working with large scale consumer products organizations and testing the way they test. So we really work to meet the industry where it is. And then we bring forth the capabilities and the expertise that an entrepreneur will have so that we don't break them. because there are many great things that small companies bring to the table. And when you introduce that into a large scale environment, the body can reject the donor. And we want to be really careful about that. There's curation and there's nurturing in order for the IP and the expertise that has been developed to thrive. But when you infuse it into that large scale environment, it also has to not break. And so we find ourselves in a position where we've been doing this for 110 years of being able to really introduce those specializations at the right time and the right way so that they don't fail.
Christine, to you.
I would bring it back to, looking at a proof of concept, the question there, it's what is your business model? And I bring it back to that because your business model will drive the type of relationship that you're going to have with the hyperscale partner or even any partner, and I touched on this with just an ISV, like an independent software vendor. So if you're an ISV, the most critical component really is what's the technical component that the cloud provider has that's going to build upon the feature that you're providing, right? So for example, if you are a database company, how am I going to tap into maybe some AI services that some of the cloud providers have? What is it that I can leverage that's unique? That will provide something that's unique for my solution in the market. And then looking at the business model. Then if the business model really is just that technical integration, there's so much online that AWS and Microsoft, IBM, Red Hat, and GCP have that allow you to really look at what you need to do in order to even do a proof of concept or have your technology kind of go to market ready, if you will.
Blake, I see we have another question around how are you driving talent upskilling in cloud technologies? And this is something that is so critical right now. There are a lot of industries that have been struggling over the last year of what has been going on in the world. Technology is not one of them. I think that right now we are at a true existential turning point as we look at the evolution of technology and the impact that it has. It is ubiquitous in every industry. It is becoming part of the amalgamation of every single sector that exists. And we don't have enough talent. Right now, our goal is to get 50% of our workforce to be focused in diversity and inclusion hires, which include leadership from all walks of life, neurological diversity, really no limitations for inclusion. And even without setting those high bar marks for ourselves, it is still challenging driving talent in this direction. And so where people might have been taking a path that would have been geared toward technology that may not be around in the next 2 to 3 years, I would urge you to really look strongly at the cloud technologies that are available today, because they will be the future of where most companies, most industries, and most sectors will be going. And if the last year has taught us anything, it is the importance of, that virtual connection, that virtual engagement, that digital access to data, the secure aspect of our data, having, precision profiling and access in a way that makes it easy for us to make decisions quickly and then to act quickly as well. Nothing does that better, more consistently than cloud-based technologies. And I will tell you that in order to find that talent, it requires us to go into the high school level. My daughter's in middle school right now, and we're doing, things like, Minecraft education design sessions so that the kids can actually learn how to build the new school of the future, which is going to look very different from their current school. What does that look like, and how do they move forward? To education for high schoolers to get their certifications and their badges in technology, where we would have waited until 3rd or 4th year college students to do that in the past. We're doing that much earlier now. So I would say that now the demand is higher than it's ever been for us to have individuals from project and program management to Six Sigma to design and development to testing to architecture to engineering to alliance management. As Christine has talked about, these relationships are complex and can be challenging to manage. And so staying in front of making sure that you have the right channels to push and deliver is really key. Now is the time. Now is when we need the most resources, and we're doing everything we can to get upskilled in that space.
And I'd love to add to this, because if I look at my team, I would have to say 50% of my team has never managed or worked with any of the hyperscale partners. So I actually hired somebody from Red Hat who was leading the programs for partners. And I brought her over and I had her lead our Google Alliance. And she has been, because she has that program and that background, and because alliances are so complex, that the way that she thinks, she's able to kind of tap into and understand the programs that Google has, and she's able to actually leverage outside vendors and for that knowledge. I'm more or less a coach at this, at that stage. The person who is leading my private offer program, he came from inside sales, had no experience at all with AWS and had no experience with private offers. But he understood how to kind of analyze the data and had other skill sets that he brought to the table. And then I had somebody else who was managing AWS, so we actually coached him, and he knows that program by the back of his hand and is able to actually leverage that expertise on the other alliances. I have somebody else on my team who is a strong operational person. So she's looking at how we can get cleaner with our bookings process and how we would look to even hire somebody for just cloud sales operations. So the folks on my team don't even necessarily have that expertise. So I look for talent in a way where, it may not necessarily be with the cloud provider, but it may be just somewhere else in their career that I feel like that would be a match. And, the more and more I dive into this role, I've become more of a mentor and a coach to help bring people more into this world, because, it's just going to get, the need is getting greater and the talent is becoming slim. And what can we do to enhance that?
Great. And so to tie all that in, how can we partner with cloud hyperscalers to solve digital security problems for business?
Yeah, and I've sent, it's funny because people are just asking questions. I'm sending them the links as we go. There are so many entry points. I don't know if you heard my session earlier today with the STEM kind of mentoring youth of the future. One of the things that we talked about was the importance of, really not always assuming that the front door is the only way in. And I think what we try to do as hyperscalers is really make it possible for it to be easier to work with us. Now, sometimes that plethora of information can be overwhelming. And so I would say tapping into your network, leveraging Christine and I to make the connections that need to be made. We can help navigate with hyperscalers. These are massive organizations. We have 400,000 people at IBM. And as you can imagine, being around for 110 years, I've been here 3 years. It's sometimes difficult for me to navigate through the right place to find the right person. But I'm finding that my extension of my network, both within IBM and outside of IBM, I've created this kind of bullseye approach. My concentric circle of people that I work with every day, the circle outside of that are the people that influence and impact me on a regular basis, and then the concentric circle outside of that are maybe people that are 2 or 3 steps away from what I'm doing on a regular basis, but I maintain my connections so that I can continue to learn and grow and drive my business forward. I would ask that you start to build those concentric circles for yourself. Those people change, their roles change, but if you have a clear understanding of what an organization is doing, it's actually pretty easy to then get connected to the right people, either through LinkedIn or through your own network. Through Christine and I, we can certainly help with the companies that we've been talking about today. But then you have to take the initiative. I think the important thing to know is we will get thousands of emails a week, thousands of LinkedIn requests a week. And to the point that Christine made early on, which I think is key, differentiating yourself, differentiating your organization, taking the initiative and driving the ball down the field, signing up and registering for Partner World and other partner ecosystems and marketplaces, getting your businesses and getting your solutions out there so that people can click, try, buy is really helpful, because the more traction you get on these places that we make available for no cost to you is free marketing. It's free access. And that buzz that you create then gets people's attention. So we, I think, have at the hyperscaler level brands that are credible, that are trusted, and that large scale companies and even small scale companies and consumers use every day. So leverage that, use it to your expertise and your experience, but take the initiative and own it start to finish. If someone doesn't call you back, call again. If someone's not the right person to connect with, find someone else in your network who will be. Try not to get frustrated and keep it moving, because the more you keep it moving, the more traction you're going to get.
I think there's a question in here: how do hyperscalers help startup ISVs go to market for enterprise sales? I was asked to present recently. How what is important in the eye of the hyperscaler, and there's three areas that I think that are really important. You have to have relevance in these three key areas. So you have to have a good marketplace and marketplace listing. Or is your software, available, in marketplace? Do you have a good description? Do you have a right call to action? Do you have good support? Is that channel kind of ready for business? And then the other piece to this is, do I have alliance-driven marketing and alliance-driven sales? So, it's one thing to have the listing, but how are you going to market and using the tools that the hyperscaler, providers have? And how are you bringing that to market? And then the last piece of that is, do I have an integrated offer? So going back to the security question is, each cloud provider has different segments, and there is a security segment within each of those. So what are the partners that are within that segment? Are you providing any differentiation? Are you able to actually, provide a solution that's maybe an extension of one of the services that the cloud providers have, right? No solution is the perfect fit, but what are you providing that is, just, net new feature that might be available for customers? And then the other piece is, how much consumption are you using from AWS, from Microsoft, from GCP? Because a lot of times you use consumption for development, you use it for training. So how are you leveraging the consumption that you use to actually go back to the cloud provider and say, hey, look, I'm also a customer and I'm also a partner. And so how do you wrap all of that together? So I always say, make yourself relevant in those three areas and leverage your consumption.
So to go back to your question, what would be a good way for us to evaluate where our solution fits into the bigger solution that's leading forces such as F5 and IBM?
Christine, I'll let you go first this time. I keep going before you.
So I'll go back to the business model, and I'll put on my channel hat for a minute. Right now F5 is in a transformation, and we're moving more towards security. In fact, we just closed on an acquisition with Altera, which is more edge security. So it's, how do you make yourself, so looking at F5, what is it that if you're an SI, or if you're a regional SI, or if you're a channel partner, what is it that you're delivering that can, make more value for that security offering for F5? That's what they're really looking at. How are you, what is your customer? What's your reach? What do you need from us? So I think it's more or less, looking at our security stack and that's kind of where we're going. And maybe this is with IBM, like where are they going with their technology, and where can you kind of hang off of that?
Yeah, I would say, and I'm going to share another link here, that there are some great videos that we've started to put together that are industry relevant now, at this current time. And just know that every day our world is changing. And one of the most important things for us at IBM is an equitable economy. Our goal is to ensure that everything we do drives for an equitable economy in a way that scales and supports humanity in the future direction of what humanity needs to achieve in a sustainable way, in an inclusive way, in a diverse way. And as I've mentioned, for 110 years, that has been IBM's mantra. What brought me to this company was seeing Hidden Figures and sharing that particular movie with my daughter, and knowing that this organization has helped enable people to be on the moon and enable some of the changes that have happened in life sciences, in humanity, in technology. Every organization that's been around for any period of time has gone through their own existential threats, their own transformation. And I have to say that being a part of an organization that has been a part of any organization's transformation along the way is humbling. It's humbling because what it requires is a growth mindset, and how you get engaged is completely contingent upon your ability to grow, expand, to kind of take apart what you're doing, to rebuild, rethink, reimagine on a regular basis. Don't get too tied to the solutions you have today, because tomorrow they will require you to be more agile and to change the way you're doing things to support what we need in order to drive an equitable economy. So you can pay attention to our marketing literature and pay attention to the videos and the content that we're providing. But more importantly, pay attention to what's going on around you, in your communities, the problems that you're trying to solve as an individual, as a parent, as a leader, as a company owner, as someone who owns a P&L. Step back and look at the whole picture and ask yourself, what paradigm do I need to shift that's going to make a difference in the markets I want to serve? Because if you're a Me Too scenario as a business, if you're an organization that's doing something slightly better than what someone else is doing, my caution to you is you may not survive. You're definitely not going to thrive. And so any opportunity you have to really, truly differentiate yourself, I can't emphasize that enough. Christine made that point multiple times. Differentiate your solution. Be smart about how you apply yourselves and get that business out there and visible, and test and learn. One of the models I love that Amazon introduced was, the kind of 60% concept, whereas most of us have been provided with and following in our business careers the 80-20 rule. The reality is that if you could just bake 40 to 60% of what you're doing, get it out there, get it in front of people, get them using it and testing it and learning from it, then you have a better shot at perfecting what you're trying to achieve in a way that actually meets people's needs. It'll never be 100% perfect. And if you wait for it to get there, you're going to lose your window. So it's a really good time right now to think outside of the box, to come up with new ways to do things and drive the monetization model that aligns with your vision. Because if you can't make money doing it, and you can't build a channel doing it, and you can't scale, then it's probably not the right solution for you.
Yeah, so to add on top of that, should they be leveraging their diversity personas to work with hyperscalers, or if our solution supports like UN sustainability goals?
Yeah, I'll add to that, absolutely. I'm on one of the thought leadership councils working with IdeaGen, and the UNCTAD, which is the Council for Trade and Development with the United Nations, in support of the Sustainable Development Goals. I've been doing that for about a decade now. And where 5 or 6 years ago, you would never have seen, with the exception of a few of us, web pages that talk about alignment to the Sustainable Development Goals. Every Fortune 500 company now has a complete plan aligned to Sustainable Development Goals. If not all 17 on the 169 tactics, at least some form of anywhere between 3 and 5. That's pretty significant to have large-scale organizations focus on that. I do believe that's a sweet spot, but it has to be relevant for what your capabilities are and the IP you bring to the table. If you can't really differentiate, but you have a good idea, it's going to be hard for you to drive upsell and cross-sell for that. So I would just say make it relevant, and if you can tie back to any one of the Sustainable Development Goals, then you will get more visibility and more impact.
Christine, to you.
I'm going to go back to the 80-20 rule, Kim, that you were talking about earlier, and getting the, Amazon's rule of getting 60% out the door. I think the other piece, that's driving a lot of innovation really is customer feedback. So if you are offering your solution and it happens to be a cloud-based solution and software as a service, for example, how can you get that how can you offer that maybe as a free tier? How can you offer that as bringing customers in to actually even try the software? And then from there, can you actually have customer feedback sessions? Customers are always very happy to give feedback, and this is an opportunity for that feedback to become a part of your innovation. So, I would say, test the market out a little bit too with the solution, and then you'll get that feedback, and then you'll be able to, you might even pivot, you might even change direction based on some of the feedback that you're getting from customers. And so I just wanted to throw that out there.
And this one's for you, Christine. Do you have any suggestions for a services and solutions cloud partner?
Emily?
Do you have any suggestions for a services and solutions cloud partner?
So for a services cloud partner, absolutely. If you're providing either like a migration service or a replatform service, or there's something that you're delivering to the customer that, either they're in the middle of their digital transformation where they might just be, trying to migrate or whatever they are in that process, there's always opportunity to partner with F5 even within our channel and GSI organization. So we're always looking for expertise. It's a very young market, I will say. I mean, as much as we're technology driven in this space, there's so much value to still add, specifically if you're a services provider. And it just depends on which industry and which segment you're in. Whether you're in financial services, there's a whole different set of capability there. So, I would just look at, what are the gaps within the industry that you're in or that you're trying to service. And then, there's, to me, service providers are adding or delivering a services is very easy to get into any program really with the cloud service providers and companies like F5 and IBM.
I'll add to that, Christine. Right now, the opportunity for cloud-based businesses, and specifically when we talk about hybrid cloud, which is remembering the fact that there's not just one cloud platform out there that many organizations are working with. It is a massive business opportunity right now. In the hundreds of billions, we're going to trillions of dollars. And if you think about that, this is now a great time for entrepreneurs, for independent software vendors, for boutique consultative organizations, for anyone who's building IP, all the way up through enterprise players to come together. We're only as successful as our collaborative innovation, and we are building out our network and our ecosystems collectively. We work very closely with F5, with Microsoft, with Amazon, with Google, with Oracle, with SAP. And you'd have to admit, if those of you who've been around for the last decade or so, those partnerships were not as prevalent 10 years ago. And the reason that they're becoming more prevalent is no single organization is going to be successful without the support and the channel engagement of everyone else. We are all part of an ecosystem, and we need to, in order to drive lifetime legacy, we need to work together. There are going to be places where we are considered co-opetition with one another. That happens. And we get very clear and very transparent of scenarios that are specifically aligned to our core values and goals as companies. But what I will say is that this is a tremendous time for anyone to work with any of us. And if you're finding difficulty in engaging, please reach out, because there are different ways that we can get engaged to help you. But I think the first thing that you have to do is get registered, make yourself visible, get your solutions out on the marketplace, drive consumption, and drive uptick. You don't necessarily need a lot from any of us to do that, but it will put you on the map, and it will drive a compelling conversation as a next step.
talked a lot about how do you get into these companies, but how do you maintain the momentum once you're inside these companies? How do you navigate the world of IBM or F5? Like, what does that all entail? And Kimberly, you can start this time.
Okay. I'd say it's all about the KPIs. We love battle cards. We love dashboards. And using data as insight to prove value is key. So having a cadence, we create these concepts of rhythm of the business. I know Microsoft uses them. I'm sure F5 uses them as well, where we have regular check-ins with our channels, and we engage with them very effectively to identify really three things. Number one, what progress are we making that has fiscal impact? And that's ROI, return on investment. If we're both investing, what's the outcome from that investment that's driving success? And number two, is there programmatic execution that's working? Have we created excellence in operational efficacy to ensure that we're maximizing our programs to scale? If I, as an individual, have to get in and start to create core content from scratch, that's probably not going to be the best use of my time if I've got to do that with hundreds of thousands of other organizations. So we're going to be dependent on each company that we work with to be able to tell their own story. Now, we give great templates for how to do that, but it really is up to the partners that we work with to have their story ready and be able to put the right operational efficacy around what they do. And the third is joint evangelism. One thing that we are all very good at the hyperscaler level is bringing on that megaphone and having that soapbox so that we can help amplify the story for any one of our partners. But you've got to have that secret sauce. What is it you want to convey? And what we try to do in working with companies is really help them clarify that message so that it's differentiated for sure. But we can't do that for you. Gartner's got a really good model for large and small companies, as does IDC and Forrester. These are the analyst firms that advise Fortune 500 companies where they're going to spend millions of dollars. And most companies will not make a decision on a purchase until they've talked to one of these organizations if it's over $1 million. So what's really critical is you take a look at what each of those analyst firms tells you to do to create a product roadmap, to create a marketing roadmap. And you apply that thinking to get presence and relevance. And then you bring that to your story. If you can bring that to your story, we can help you tell your story, but we can't tell your story for you. So I would say those are the three things that are critical. I'll turn it over to Christine. I'm sure she has more.
I'll give the other side of the coin. I'll give the viewpoint of what I'm doing in order to create operational efficiency with some of the programs. So one of the things I look at are market trends. You talked about IDC and Gartner, Kim. We're looking at right now, it's interesting because multi-cloud is becoming more and more prevalent. Like there's a lot of customers that are maybe looking at different services from AWS that they really, love. And then there's other services, with Azure that they're looking at that they want. So there's a lot of complexity that goes on with managing that. So that's one trend, right? So, but what we do is we look at the trends and then we look at what is our relationship with each of these cloud providers. I always say alliances is a team sport, meaning that, we grab everybody that's in different organizations. So I have folks from the product team, I have folks from the marketing team, obviously my team in sales and alliances. And bi-weekly, we go through, what are the priorities and where are we following? How are we tracking to our KPIs? So we do more of this business analysis, but everybody is involved in that because, two things. We're dependent on other organizations being involved in the cause, as I call it. But then there's also, diversity of thought that comes from that. There's something that, the product team might have us start thinking about that we probably haven't even thought about, right? So I think it's being structured and operationalizing internally how you're tracking. But I think it's also too looking at what market trends are and are you adding value into one of those market trends are with the hyperscalers.
One more thing I'll add, and I just popped it up, kind of a blast from the past. When we embarked on cloud-based technologies with Microsoft a little over a decade ago, one of the things that we needed to do is make sure that our partner ecosystem knew what that looked like. It was such a new arena for many firms, with the exception of Salesforce.com and what we were doing at Microsoft at the time, and where Amazon was starting to embark. There were very few cloud players. And so I dusted this particular document off because the core levers that we identified at the time are still applicable now. Where you were looking at, if you're an ISV, an EBITDA of roughly 15%, still applicable. If you're going to work with a hyperscaler for cloud, you have to have cash flow to be able to move your resources around. So I think that's a good primer to start with for a lot of companies. We also have a ton of materials. I know IBM, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and F5 have a ton of great information. But if you're just embarking on this path, I think that core primer that we did was really helpful, and that was focused on Microsoft Dynamics at the time, but it is certainly applicable for any ISV who's going into, or any services provider that's going into cloud, and they want to be cloud native, or they're moving their on-premises capabilities into cloud-based technologies.
And the last question is for you, Kim. What is the strategy behind IBM elevating the role of partners with an investment of $1 billion? And how can partners and end customers participate?
Well, Partner World, I sent the link earlier in the chat. Partner World is the way to get engaged for both customers and partners. We are infusing our focus on our ecosystem because of the fact that we know that we cannot thrive without our ecosystem. While we have tremendous expertise in a multitude of technologies in the enterprise space and in the industries that we serve, we, again, can't get there without our ecosystem. And so what I love about the messaging that has come from Arvind and our leadership, as well as our board, is the fact that we will thrive with our ecosystem, and it is front and center to our ongoing success. So you will continue to see ongoing messaging and investment and focus in partner ecosystem. And my own role focused very much on our relationship with Microsoft and Red Hat and helping drive our hyperscaler capabilities is indicative of the type of investment that we're making. As a global vice president focused on that strategy for a multi-billion-dollar, 400,000 person company, that tells you the depth and the focus that we're giving to these relationships. And we have teams of thousands of people that are focused on the other hyperscalers that are out there, because they are absolutely critical to our success, and our joint partnership is key. I don't think many people know that about IBM, and I love that question's come up, because if you just take a look at not only our presence and our digital assets, but what we're doing with companies around the world, you'll see that we never do it alone. We never do it alone.
Great. Well, I want to thank you both for giving a very insightful, everyone, the chat was blowing up. It was great. So I'm going to give both of you 1 minute to tell me, what are your final thoughts? What wasn't discussed? I'm sorry, I accidentally muted you, Christine. But Christine, we'll start with you. If you just make sure to unmute yourself first.
Okay. So final thoughts. Well, Kim had talked about ecosystem, and I don't think we talked about that a lot. I think, as we go to market, it really is about how are we leveraging the entire ecosystem. For me, I'm looking at investments in the way of, I don't try to boil the ocean. What I try and do is see, okay, where am I at in the process, and where is my level of investment? Maybe my level of investment needs to be on one partner for right now. Maybe that's all I need to do. And it's okay to think big, but you want to think big and you want to start small in order to maybe test out some go-to-market motions and look at the ecosystem and kind of look at these other things. So that's pretty much what I would say.
I would say that don't forget that we're makers, everyone who is embarked in the area of technology as a career choice, as a path, and again, this is across every industry. Even if you're not considering yourself a technologist, you are a technologist. You're using your phone, you're using your laptop to make decisions, to identify insights. You're connecting with people virtually. You're a technologist, and we are the makers. And if you look at the Gallup poll and their recent research and a couple of publications that they've issued, they've noted that we hit this massive crevasse over the course of the last 20 years where we've moved from industrialization to technology. And through that, we lost ourselves as makers. I think we found ourselves again. I think all of us are now makers of the new future. And as technologists, we are empowering the world to really change humanity and to create lifetime legacy. So step up and be part of that change, because now is the time. Any idea you have can convert through technology to empower, a completely new world, a new economy, and a new approach for how we solve for humanity's biggest problems. Now's the time.
Before we go, I am told I have to take a picture. So I'll have both of you just look at the camera and smile. And I will count down 1, 2, 3, and that's when we'll do it. So 1, 2, 3, smile. Perfect. Let me check. Okay.
I love it.
It'll look good for as well as we can on cam. But thank you, everyone, for an incredible session. And we'll go back to the floor, and you guys are dismissed. Yeah. Thank you.
Good to see you.
It was good to see you, Christine. Thank you, Brandon.